another one there. We look at Rwanda. It has 106 members of parliament. It has deputies. It also has a speaker there. 80 and 26 is the composition there. And in total, the parliament here comes to about 109, 106. Let's look at another country in the region. We look at Kenya. 349 seats, 290 elected, 47 ladies, 12 nominated by representation, but in total this comes to 349. The population in this country is about 53 million people. What does that mean for us? We also look finally at home. The 11th Parliament, which composes of 353 constituencies there, 146 representatives being ladies, 10 from the Defense Forces, 5 from the youth, 5 from the people with disabilities there. We also look at 5 from the workers, 5 from the older people, and 28 ex-officials, giving us a total of 557 with a population of 46 million people. If India as a country that is 1.3 billion has about 550 members of parliament, where are we getting it wrong? Where can we correct this? Is this a constitutional matter? But also suggestions have been made that the House needs to be reduced to 229 as of this weekend. But today, the Minister of Cabinet for Constitutional Affairs has gone ahead to say we need assistant deputy speakers. That is for you to stew on. What does that mean? He gives an example when the Right Honourable Rebecca Kadaga and the Right Honourable the late Jacob Olanya were out of the country and we could not have plenary. Is this necessary? Can the population in this country handle a magnitude of 557 and more officials coming on board without really getting substance and we're getting a lot of form? This is what we dive in today, but let's meet the panel.
From the inception of LegCo through the 10th and into the current 11th Parliament, we've witnessed an unprecedented surge in the number of MPs. The critical question now arises, does this surge correlate with an elevation in the quality of parliamentary debates? Are we seeing a commensurate improvement in legislation with this expanded representation? Tonight, on Behind the Headlines, Timothy Nyangweso explores parliamentary evolution, encompassing Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, and other examples from the continent. Joining him are a distinguished panel of experts. Honorable Dr. Agnes Appiah Atim, a dedicated district woman representative advocating for the people of Amolata in Parliament. Honorable Naomi Kabasharira, a seasoned member who was in the 6th Parliament and now represents the people of Rushenyi in the 11th Parliament. Dr. Benson Tusasire, a luminary in constitutional law with extensive experience in legal practice. Honorable Paul Omara, the impassioned voice of the people of Otuke County, renowned for his insights and articulate discourse on economics. Professor Sarah Sally, a prominent figure in the field of women and gender studies, serving as a dean at Makerere University.
All on your public broadcaster, UBC, inspiring.
So that is the topic of discussion tonight, but also we want to be able to stand with the Kasubi school that has gotten burnt today, and also keep you in mind that there is a business advisory that has been given by the US to Uganda there, especially saying the climate is not feasible there. Let me turn to the people here. Ladies and gentlemen, you're very welcome. Thank you very much for coming, and we really appreciate that you came in on time. You can be part of the show. Go to our YouTube channel, drop your comment there, let us know what you think, or go to our WhatsApp number 0709 60 25 92. You can text or WhatsApp us there and let us know, or go to what formerly was Twitter, now X platform there, drop your comment and hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines. Let me give you some numbers of the parliaments that have sat before. The 6th Parliament, which had 270 members. The 7th had 295 members. When we look at the 8th, it had 326. The 9th, 375. And the 10th had 457. The 11th is the biggest we have had. Let's get to Honorable Mara. Honorable Mara, first and foremost, there's a story that replayed, especially when you and me were here, but I'll get to that question.
Yes.
What is happening in the House that seems like it is becoming Comedy Central?
Thank you very much, Timothy. As you're aware, many of us, almost 78% or 80%, are first-timers in the House. Within the last 2 years, we have been able to catch up and understand the parliamentary rules of procedure and how to interface in debates and dialogue in the House. And the rules are very clear how members of parliament need to conduct themselves. Most of the time in a democratic way, if you disagree vehemently over a matter, especially the members of opposition, you can, with a lot of civility, raise your case. And if you totally disagree without being disagreeable, you can decide to walk out smartly. But of recent, what we have seen happening in the House, it is regrettable. Because the public that would be watching from outside there, and also who sent us to Parliament to come and legislate and represent them, they sometimes look and say, what kind of parliament do we have? It is true that sometimes tempers can rise, but we should never be in a position to degenerate sometimes so low that it will be very difficult to tell the difference between what is happening in a district council and what is happening in the national parliament. So some of those things are regrettable, and the speaker, for example, today said there is dialogue going on between the leaders of government and opposition to iron out some areas of differences so that the opposition, because we are one team really, so that they can come back to their house. But also in the week passed by, because we spent almost 2 days being with some elements disrupting the proper discourse of the House on matters that borders on personal issues. So I believe that if you have a personal issue, then one should be able to find avenue of resolving it either through the administration or outside there. You should not come and then bog the entire House on something which basically looks personal.
And Honorable Mara, we once sat here, especially when we were talking about the 11th Parliament.
Yes.
And I want to quote you verbatively. You said you would bring a private member's bill to discuss the number of members in Parliament. How far have you gone with this? What does it look like? And what's your justification?
So far, I think so far so good. I am actually a seconder of a motion seeking leave of Parliament to bring in a private member's bill to downsize Parliament. As you're aware, the motion is being moved by Honorable Naomi Kabasharirwa. I'm one of the seconders. The matter is before the Speaker, and hopefully next week we hope to have it on the order paper so that it is debated and is discussed. The reason for it are many, but maybe I could mention 3. If you remember, in 2015, the then Minister of Local Government, Honorable Adolphe Mwesige, tabled a motion for resolution of Parliament to create 39 new constituencies. As you mentioned, this would increase the number of seats in Parliament from 387 to 429. Now, the reasons that were advanced were the following. 1, to resolve friction between leaders. friction between leaders, which means if I disagree with you, and maybe we are both important, then what you can do is you curb something for me. So, which means constituencies creation is like personal to holder. That was the reason. The second one is to emancipate some tribal groupings, bringing service closer to the people. You know, there were consideration that there were small tribes within bigger ones. So, and if you don't create a constituency for them, then they will never come out to become a member of parliament. So, because of tribal sentiments, we created constituencies. Then also to address the challenge of removing domination of bigger ethnic groups in some districts. If you remember, when I think President Museveni traveled to Tororo, there was a guy who ate live, a rat. He chewed a rat, that we are different from the other people, we are different. So create for us ours. That's where districts came from, and then more constituency created on trying to curb the domination of bigger ethnic groups in some of the districts. Then the reason was to improve service delivery arising out of the population growth. But let's look at the rationale. If you look at the creation of these constituencies, outlining ethnicity creates further ethnic divisions. It doesn't stop there, because you might create the smaller tribe to be represented. You think you have solved the problem. But then within the ethnic groups, some of them start saying, but no, this clan is dominating us. So you now must create another for the clan now, which actually create further divisions, contravening constitutional provisions against discrimination based on what? Ethnicity. So we drove those considerations looking at the ethnic consideration. Now, when we created this, this idea of trying to solve problems of ethnicity and so forth, but you look at that, this thing is already existing in legislation, as we've seen in the establishment of institutions like Equal Opportunities Commission, the Human Rights Commission, Education Service Commission, Health Service Commission. These were to address imbalances of ethnicity, address gender, address whatever. So if you now try now to create ethnicity based on, a constituency based on ethnicity, you are actually offending the provision of the Constitution and undermining some of the acts that created Equal Opportunity Commission, because this one now deal with the issues of imbalances. So now we have got, as you've said, a number of constituencies. We now have 557 MPs, including ex-official members. So the reasons for creation of those constituencies cannot stand if you try to argue today. It won't stand. The second thing which we think should be considered to downsize, you've given us statistics, and I've got my numbers here. So Uganda has now 557 MPs. Kenya has 349 MPs. Tanzania, 393. South Africa has 400. Singapore has 93. United Kingdom has 650. Out of this one we have put in place, Uganda is only UK that beats us. But if you want to look at the GDP, and which is my pet subject, Uganda's GDP is the lowest. $45.56 billion. Kenya has $113.42 billion. Tanzania, $75.71 billion. South Africa, $405.8 billion. United Kingdom, $3 trillion. Singapore, $466.79 billion. So for us who have the smallest GDP and population, by the way, smallest GDP, population, we have the highest numbers of MPs. So the creation of these constituencies were in the main basically political. There was no any other consideration which was done. If you disagree with you and I'm popular, we are both popular and we want to be kept, they carve for you a constituency.
Okay.
Yeah.
Honorable Mara, let me welcome Captain Francis Babu, a veteran politician. Thank you for joining us, and we really appreciate that you came on short notice. We appreciate that so much. Let me bring in our first-time panelist, Dr. Benson. When you see our house that is meant to be representing the views of the people, meant to be representing national interests, get into personal squabbles, as a constitutional dawn, where is the problem and how do we mitigate it?
Thank you. To me, the whole problem starts from the way, in this country, the way we do things. We rarely do things according to a plan. Even when we have a plan, we tend to abandon it and just move on. So, you at the beginning showed how the numbers kept increasing from one parliament to the next until we have 557. You can see nobody sat and planned that over the years we keep increasing until we reach that number. We would stumble into it accidentally. Now you are saying the thinking, the theory would be that people are getting well represented because you are creating many MPs, so you are bringing political services maybe closer to the people. But you actually don't. Because, and you have seen it in the way Parliament is now working, with 557 MPs. Basically, there is no room for talking. On any motion being debated, you cannot have meaningful debate because of the sheer numbers. You have to limit them so little time.
2 minutes.
2 minutes now. How much can you say in 2 minutes to make an impact? So what then is the result? The result is a politician still survives by talking. The result is that they must look for a way of being seen. If they're not going to debate and be seen to have debated, then you have, sometimes it resembles WrestleMania, that American wrestling. People must be dramatic. Every small thing must be dramatized because it's the only way to stand out in a crowd. So definitely there is no way you're going to go far with a crowd for Parliament. It simply cannot go on. And as the Honorable Omara said, some of the considerations were outrageous. They were so personal. Some of the constituencies were being created to address individual concerns. Some were so ethnically founded that they really defeat the whole idea of not being sectarian. You cannot run a country in such an unplanned fashion. And you see, it is not just in Parliament. It is also in the way districts were created. It is in the way municipalities are being created. It is in the way cities were created. It is in the way government agencies, authorities, and so on were created. And then later we say, oh, there are too many. Now you want to remerge them. There is even no will to merge them. Meanwhile, you are complaining that the civil service is too big, but you have no will to reduce it. In every government department, ministry, you have a PS, then you have a director, then you have commissioners. It is not clear where directors came from. Recent decision was made to get rid of directors, but there is no will to get rid of them. They extended their term, I think, for another year. So the way we do things, almost by try and error, is what resulted in this kind
Sticking there, you have given us what it looks like, but let's dig deeper into your academia. When you look at the composition of government, executive, legislature, the judiciary, and you're saying the way we're planning is wrong, what should be the culture and the character of a parliament or an arm of legislature in this country or world over?
One, it should effectively represent parts of the country. Effectively meaning they are given opportunity to meaningfully represent or project the interests of their people. Now, with numbers, you can't do that. Two, there should be a formula under which you either increase or reduce the numbers of representatives. Now, the Constitution has some general framework on how Parliament can create or constituencies. But, of course, the Constitution cannot dictate the politics. Rather, the politics dictate how the Constitution is applied. I'm not even sure that, as I said earlier, that somebody sat and planned that in so many years, let's have so many MPs because the population is increasing like this. When you look at Article 63 of the Constitution, it says that every time there is a national census, within 12 months, the Electoral Commission should go down on the ground and review the constituencies and may have to redemarcate them, because representation is supposed to be by quota system, in that you get the number of the total population of the country, divide it by the number of constituencies, and get an average that every constituency should have, an average population. And so every constituency should have at least that number, around that number, maybe slightly more or slightly less, but there should be a guiding number. Now, what do you have here on the ground? You have constituencies like Chira or Nansana with a population of over 500,000 people. And then you have other constituencies with a population of maybe 30,000 people.
Yes.
So there is no uniformity in representation. That means some people are underrepresented and others are overrepresented. But it gets even more ridiculous. Assume you are a woman who is disabled and in the army. How many and you are below 30? How many MPs do you have? You have your woman representative. Yes. You have your representative for the disabled. You have your representative for the youth. Then you have the representatives of the army, and then the one of the ordinary constituents. Yes. And you are even working, so maybe you even have that of the workers. Yes. So who runs the country like that? To me, one way, definitely, I believe it's time. They should have been reduced yesterday. Of course, they should never even have had such numbers. But one way to begin thinking of how to reduce the numbers is to reconsider the question of the levels of representation.
And let's come back to that. Let me bring in Honorable Atim. You and Honorable Mara at the center of this, the 11th Parliament there. A lot happening, especially. We do not want to dismiss the list of 18 people either kidnapped, missing, and for the length of time. It's a very patent issue. But how do we trivialize such an issue that it becomes personal in there? When you look at the happenings in the House, it's stopped, take 20 minutes recess, come back. Discuss. When I looked at the bills that have been put before Parliament, there are 67. 21 have been passed. What is happening with the 11th Parliament?
Thank you, Timothy. And I think when we talk about the 11th Parliament, we need to understand that Parliament represents the society. And so the people we have there are actually a representation of the society that we live in. And of course that comes with the character, that comes with the understanding of the role and the processes that need to be undertaken. But I also want to pick from where my colleagues have stopped, that I think the issue of the 11th Parliament needs not to be seen in isolation. I think it represents a bigger picture of who we are as a country. And for me, the issue of the behaviors, you have talked about the quality and the numbers and all that. But I would summarize it that I think it's a bigger leadership question that we need to be asking ourselves. And in that context, I think Professor has brought it up. And I think, yes, numbers count a lot on the issues and what you're trying to see, that because we are actually many, we tend to really fail to comprehend what exactly is the priority of the things that we need to focus on. And so on that leadership question, and I think Prof has talked about it, that Uganda is one of the over-governed countries in the world, I think.
Yeah.
And as I was coming here, I was reading a report of Electoral Commission. In 2016, we had about 1.3 million leaders. And in 2021, we actually have about 1.6 million people, meaning every 3 people or 10 people going, 3 of them are leaders in one way or the other. Those are just like institutional leadership from LC1 to Parliament and all that. Now, I'm trying to bring this, to bring us to the context of how you view the 11th Parliament. And what you see there is what is termed democracy in quotes, that whatever utterances, the behavior, the moving in and out, it is termed democracy. And it is termed that we are running a multi-party politics and politicians, the different political parties. Like professors just mentioned, that really we need to show. You need to come out from the crowd and really be seen to be doing something. But also not losing on the side that not everything that happens there is really, should be looked at it in a negative way, or it's drama or something like that. But I think it comes to the question of how do we actually make the Parliament more effective and efficient in the way we run our business. And like you rightly said, that I think also as a House, of course we have very critical issues to handle. For example, we have bills, we have motions and all that. And to say that the issue of trivializing issues, for me, I think it's the way in which we contextualize things, the way we understand them, and the way we should actually be able to handle it. For example, the walking out of our colleagues in on the opposition side, to some extent, it is overrated, I think, but also to the other aspect as well. Our rules actually allow, and I think the speaker was very clear to members that he will not stop any member from walking out or sitting. It is actually at your free will. The bottom line is that you are elected to represent your people and to be the voice of your people. Now, if you choose and you think that walking out is an option to represent your people, I think the rules really allows for that. But we also need to appreciate that I think the 11th Parliament have done some good work. In the last 2 sessions, I don't remember the bills, but I know compared to other parliaments, we have actually passed more bills than the former parliaments. It's only now that, especially this 3rd session, where we are seeing a lot of hiccups here and there. But we hope that it will really improve. But the question is, the bigger question is leadership. Do we actually need to have all the numbers that we are talking about?
And Honorable, let me stay there. You have said a lot has been done by the 11th. We remember the walking out when Honorable Segirinya and Honorable Sawanyana were in jail. We also remember the walking out of the missing people, claims of kidnaps and abductions there. There has been enough walking out and not representation.
Yes.
And some of the things that have been said, out of the 29 committees you have in Parliament, 4 that are supposed to be accounting, 2 of which Honorable Mara sits on, finance and budgeting, when we look at just adoption of the Attorney General's reports for these things, for questions that we're asking about accountability, when we look at the cardinal roles of Parliament, oversight, representation, budget appropriation, legislation, we ask ourselves, is this all you can do? Because roads, hospitals, and schools are not yours, that you keep promising. 2 minutes of speaking. Have you done enough as the 11th Parliament, except being on the news for the last 2 weeks?
I think in terms of doing enough or not doing enough, we have very comprehensive monitoring, performance monitoring tool as a house. And we do assess ourselves on how best we are really doing the work that we're supposed to do. And yes, in the House, the representation question is a big one. And like I said, that it is all dependent on an individual member of Parliament, but also in examining yourself, that how best would I really represent myself. Yes, it's true that there has been a lot of walking ins and outs, but I don't think that has really created that big, very big impact in the way the House needed to be operated, as it's really been seen. But for me, I think the question that we need to really be asking ourselves is so much about that, even if we don't walk out, are we really delivering what we're supposed to deliver? And yes, the issue of time, of 2 minutes, and the issue of numbers, and how effectively you can actually talk on an issue, it is an issue that needs to be addressed. And that is why this particular discussion around numbers is really coming up. And I hope that if those kind of discussions could really take up and it's implemented, and we are really so much on seeing how best we can have a house that is manageable and that can fully represent our people. But in terms of performance, I think we are really performing as expected. It may not be like to the expectation of the country, but I think it's lessons that we are learning. And I think Honorable Mara has just told you that every parliament, we're about, I think, 80% who are really first-timers, they're new. And some of these things that are happening, some of us actually feel that we needed to have paid attention to more important things than really walking in and out and arguing over certain issues that can actually be addressed in other forums. But like I said, Parliament, we call it, is a people's parliament. And so members of Parliament and other people would want to do things the way they would really feel pleases them. And I think you've also raised a critical issue that, does this have an impact on the budget or the expenditures that comes along with the representation? And yes, one of the bigger questions definitely that I'm hoping we shall get there is really the impact how as a country, what do we prioritize in terms of service delivery, in terms of leadership and representation and all that. Yes, I think that the more numbers we have, of course, it compromises to the services that needs to be given. So it is about prioritization, really. What does the country need at the moment? And we shouldn't also forget where we're coming from as a country. In the 1980s, an RSC in the village was the most important person at that time than even a member of Parliament.
Okay. Because
they played their role of really ensuring that there is peace in all these communities that we come from.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Let me come, before I come to Captain Francis Babu, you had something to say, Honorable.
Yes. I want to say something regarding to the 11th Parliament's performance. I think it's on record that this Parliament has passed more bills and more resolutions than any other parliament. That's on record, and we can extract the numbers. The Right Honourable Speaker of Parliament as well, she said this is a people's parliament. It's just like a people-based parliament. So whatever that we try to do, she has been pushing committees to make sure that you deliver. And also, one of the things that happen is that when you are standing up there, whatever you present must be fact-based. Now, the only skirmishes that you see is that the opposition, especially the leading opposition, NUP, when they join the parliament, they are young people, they are quite boisterous. I think they came with an idea, it's just like, it's either our way or no way.
No way.
So, and some of them have been very disruptive. But what I should say is that I want to give a lot of credit to leader of opposition, Honorable Matthias Mpuga. He's really led the team with a great sense of calmness. He has young parliamentarians whom he is trying to mentor and lead, but sometimes you can see these guys, they shout from wherever they were, they bang tables. So I think it's a learning process. Overall, I think this parliament has done well. But the point, though, which Honorable Agnes has talked about, is our numbers. Because of our numbers, we cannot have effective debate. Yesterday we had, we paid homage to the late Honorable Henry Chamber, and there was a lot of eulogies. And our senior Honorable Abdul Katuntu said, where has this parliament been? Why? Because there was leverage of time given to members really to speak from their hearts. And even the Right Honorable Deputy Speaker, Honorable Tayeba, led very well. And people spoke very well. You could see a big difference. Now, my view is that parliamentarians should be given adequate time to legislate and to talk over these matters. But when you are now boxed into 2 minutes, you are an economist, you want to give ideas on legislating on banking laws, and you are only 2 minutes. So it makes it completely, yeah. So that is what we need to address. The rest of the skirmishes is in a tea in a small cup.
Let me bring in Captain Francis Babu. I know you have watched and seen what has been happening, but also looking back at especially when you were in Parliament and some of the things I went back to be able to see when you were talking about the ministers then that were censured. When you look at quality versus quantity, when you look at substance versus form, is this still the People's Parliament?
Yeah, I think we make a lot of mistakes in our submission on this issue. The problem, the majority of the people in this House are extremely good. The majority. You have a small majority, a small minority which wants visibility. And they can't get visibility outside, so they go to Parliament where they have cameras to get visibility. And they get this visibility by saying things which they should be taking to the police, or they should be talking in their areas where they represent. So, we must now, if you like, unbundle the whole thing. First, how big is this parliament, and why is it that big? You've been given all the reasons why it is that big. As far as I'm concerned, that is a very big mistake we made. The people who made this constitution, we gave them leeway to play around by increasing numbers in one way or the other. It's a mistake because we did not even look at our economy. It's a mistake is because we did not make a good study on how a parliament works. We could have even gone to the American Constitution when they were making it, when there was this big debate between the geographical area and the population. Who should represent who? Now, we've got all those. We knew, we've seen, we've heard. We've looked at the Indian model. We've looked at the British model. We've looked at the Philippine model. We've got all these models. The problem is that we've got a lot of elite here who talk as if they're in London. They talk as if they've just come out of Oxford University and they think we're in Britain, where they have trillions of dollars and pounds. This country is poor.
Yeah.
And this country had a different form of management. And we've got a problem in our DNA. We've got a discriminatory DNA. We discriminate each other. And therefore we bring it in everything that in our thinking. You even have this equal opportunity. Why should we have that? Somebody should be employed because he's able to do the job. But we even put it in Parliament. We've got a big thing. You know, we even have a secretariat, I think. Now, all these things we are talking about, really, we must now do away with. After so many years, from the time we made this constitution up to now, we could even go back to it because we said every 10 years we should review the number of this extra representation. The women, the youth, the PWD, and so on and so forth. We said every 10 years. How many years is it now? Nearly
40 years.
40 years? So for 40 years we've done nothing. As far as I'm concerned, that group, we put it there so that people could see that they were able to go to Parliament. And therefore we should be able to do away with the whole lot. That's my view, to begin with. With a lot of respect, should we go population so that every one member of Parliament represents, let's say, 300,000 people, just for argument's sake? Or let's say American is 500. In other countries it differs. But let's say ours, just for argument's sake, let's make it half of the American, 250. Divide it in 45 million people, you should get a parliament of about 200 people, or less. Now, you don't need to be a genius to do that.
No.
Secondly, we sit down, that one will do away even with all those arguments about districts and whatnot. Let's just use a population.
Yes.
Now, if you feel you want to have some sort of regional representation, then go on regional representatives and have regions. When we got independence, we had 15 districts. Make those districts regions, for argument's sake.
Yes.
Just make them districts.
Regional governments.
Regional governments.
Yes.
And let's have House of Representatives in regional governments.
Yes.
So that they're a little bit bigger than these little districts we have, which to me are Mickey Mouse.
Yes.
They can't even run a tractor.
Yeah, it's true.
Let's have a region, and let the region have a small legislative assembly.
Yes.
And have legislatures who will sit there.
Yes.
Like they have in other countries, like the Kenya. They have copied our system very well. They have made the counties and call it a devolution.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, federal, devolution, and decentralization is the same thing, just playing around with words. It's division of power. So if we have, let's just for argument's sake, we have 15 regions. But for helping so that Sebei and Mbale don't fight, we could make it a little bit more. And we have Toro and the Renzori don't fight, we can add in that one so that we don't have that problem. But at the end of the day, let's have regions, and then we have legislative assemblies which can do the work there. These districts we are talking about, those are counties basically.
Yes.
They are no longer districts as far as I'm concerned. So this game of the DNA I talked about, of sectarianism, which is natural, we should stop it. Anybody wants to be our leader, they should go to school, they should study, and they should have leadership qualities.
Yeah.
And they are elected by that region or those people. Now, after we've done that, you will find that, in fact, I am a big supporter of that motion. Can they allow me to come and say something?
Yes.
Because it's extremely important. That parliament should not be more than 200 people, full stop. And we can say that every time the population increases, we shall review that a member of parliament, instead of representing 250, makes it 300.
Yes.
Captain Francis, on the point where you've said that region, a leader, you go to school, how do we get quality leaders?
Oh, by the way, before the Mzungu came here, how did we get our leaders? Have you ever stopped to think about that? These leaders, these kings we had, and our chiefs and whatnot, they had a way to look for leaders. For example, the king of Buganda never grew up in the palace. He grew up with a local family.
Yes.
They trained him. And when they wanted a local chief, they would go in the area and ask, who's got a good family here, who can give us a good leaders? And they would get good leaders. And by the way, they ran the institution very well. So we can still, and this is where our parties have completely let us down. A party is supposed to be a vehicle to go and look for good leaders, one, to train them, and also bring them so that they can be able to compete. They are not doing that. They are picking up everybody who wants to be a leader. In fact, I'll read something for you what Socrates said. The problem, we as Ugandans must stop and be able to have a system that we can afford. We can't afford this parliament. We need to be able to afford it. And the only way to afford it is to make it nearly less than half. Let's not even talk about the economics and GDP. We just can't afford it, full stop. We talk GDP, then somebody might not understand. We just look in our pocket, can we afford that parliament? We want to be able to afford it and give them good remuneration and get good leaders.
Actually, less.
Okay.
Now, let me also finish with this one, because it's extremely important that this business of trying to please, we are not pleasing anybody. We want good leaders who can take us forward. Now, my friend here, Socrates, said something very interesting. He said, what Socrates said about democracy more than 2,000 years ago, he said the democracy must fall because it will try to tailor to everyone. Everybody will become democratic. The poor will want wealth of the rich. And the democracy will give it to them. Young people will want to respect, young people will want to be respected as elderly, and democracy will give it to them. So these are the young people you're talking about? They want you to respect them like elders. Foreigners will want rights of the native. A democracy will give it to them. Thieves and fraudsters will want important government functions, and democracy will give it to them. And at the time when thieves and fraudsters are finally democratically taken authority because of criminals and evildoers want power, there will be worse dictatorship than in the time of monarchy or oligarchy.
Yes.
Now, it's what's telling you is democracy is not that perfect. So when every time we talk about getting our good governance, somebody comes with the word democracy and quotes one or two things. But democracy has also got mistakes. So what we need to do now is to get our country and we sit down as Ugandans and say, wait a minute, what is our problem? First of all, that parliament is too big. Take it or leave it, it's too big. Let's get a reasonable parliament. If you feel that the governance is not good enough, let's have regions.
Yes.
Which, we can have very good regions. And that's why I'm sad that we never accepted the East African Federation when the Mzungus brought it.
Okay. Captain Francis,
wanted
Honorable, just one, then I come into Professor
Yes, a
Sarah.
small one. I think you asked Honorable, how do we get good leaders and those leaders that would really aspire to have? For me, I see two things. One, we have over-incentivized leadership. Being a member of parliament currently has become a job. If only we can take leadership to be a service to people, very few people would go for it. And personally, I think on top of, I will be one of those to second the motion, is to reduce as much as possible on the incentives we give leaders generally, so that we make it very unattractive for people who are coming for it for a job.
Okay.
There we will be able to sieve a little. And I think if you see in more developed democracy that Honorable has just described, you find that people who go there are really people who have different motivations to join, for example, politics and be leaders. So I think we might also, besides the numbers, let us also come down to what is it that we expect of a leader.
Okay. Let me bring in Professor. Professor, you and I are just bystanders.
We are not bystanders.
We have voted. We expect representation. We expect all these things to be happening for us there. Why has Parliament become a spectacle of a laughing stock?
Thank you very much, Timothy, and good evening, viewers. One, I think I'm not a bystander. I'm a voter and I teach these things. So I study them and I research them. So I'm not an innocent bystander. The other thing we need to disabuse ourselves from is to imagine we have the standard. and we know, and therefore the other people are going wrong, and they have become a spectacle. Actually, they haven't become. If you watch what parliaments do world over, they behave like that. They're either fighting each other. Okay, they are the four cardinal rules: representation, legislation, oversight, and budget, as you presented them. But as they do those things, sometimes they are peacefully working through committees, sometimes they are fighting each other over tables and abusing each other. So Ugandan parliament is not peculiar in those kinds of things. Look at Asian parliaments, look at Latin American parliaments, American parliaments, European parliaments. These things do occasionally occur. So that is one thing. So we should not claim to be having the gold standard against which we are evaluating those people. Captain Francis Babu said the majority of those guys are actually very good leaders. It is just a few who are dramatizing. But even in the dramatizing, I think that's what the kind of politics of the people they represent call for. So I think another thing we need to remember is that parliaments are not detached from the societies in which they arise. Captain Francis Babu talked about us having a DNA of discrimination. We were in secondary school and lower secondary school when the NRM came to power, and one of the things it passed was the anti-sectarian bill. It was supposed to have resolved these things. So how come that today identity matters and is a key thing to representation? So we have big parliaments in Africa today, and not just in Uganda, in Africa, because one, we are balancing regional spread. So you have the geographical, but also you're having the demographic. So you have the area scope that people have to be represented from the different geographies they're coming from in the country. But then you also have the demographics, whether people are young or they are elderly, and now the youth today, imagine no one else knows anything, except if you are 30 years and below. So some are young, some are elderly, some are youth representing that region, some are female. Then from there you go into the religious spread, then you have to have this, you have to have that. Then of course you go to the political parties, okay? So parliaments are not detached from the context that give birth to them, regardless of what standard and what models you have in the world. They reflect and mirror the societies that give birth to them. And that's why you're having this cloning of constituencies and whatever to be accommodative, because that has become the political formula to achieve stability, okay? So beyond what you see as parliament is a political balancing game that someone is trying to sort. So at the end of the day, when we are talking, it's not just about how much money, how much GDP. The issue is, what does the society look like? Why has identity become so important that even if we were from the other region in colonial times, today we are different, okay? And even when we are the same tribe in the district, we shall go for the clan, and then we are privileging these things. And unfortunately, these things arise when people feel excluded. When there's massive development where we say today we are doing 10 kilometers of a road there, and tomorrow we shall do it there wouldn't be these things. But when the road keeps going the other side and resources keeps going to the other side, and then people begin saying, even if we're in this village, it's the other family, the road keeps going to the other side of Kwapa or Tororo, whatever, because that's where the people who first got degrees come from. Then people say, the only way we shall also get 5 kilometers of a trunk road here is if we are also in. So these matters of identity are arising because of uneven development. Some people would want to call it failure of development, but I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't call it failure. It is uneven development. If you have an equality in development, and it is transparent and it's clear, people are not going, and including opportunities, people are not going to debate most of these things. But also one reason why Ugandans are so jittery about the current parliament and have no kind words for it is the cost of running this parliament. So what Honorable Pear has said, is there a cheaper way? Because we need both quantity and quality anyway. Is there a cheaper way of running this parliament? But also, why is it expensive? Why are remunerations to MPs expensive? Because they have taken on roles which are not traditionally their roles. Suddenly it's an MP to bring a bridge, an MP want to pay fees, an MP they want to pay to foot our barriers, an MP has to foot our weddings, an MP has to do everything. To the extent that actually many MPs are not going back to the communities. It's too expensive. All they need to see is your car pass, and the following morning you wake up and you have 500 people in the community. This child doesn't have a job, the other one has dropped out of school, the other one is sick. So at the end of the day, even with the amounts of money MPs are having, many of them are broke. You've been reading about them in the papers. They took loans and they're ending up in jail. So the debate is an important debate, okay? And I know the bill has not yet been presented, but we are not jumping the gun. We are informing that debate right now by saying where have things gone wrong. So if we are talking about downsizing, it is not just about cutting numbers, but to try and say, how do we resolve this matter of representation and identity in our country? Given that even with an anti-sectarian bill, we are more sectarian today.
Yeah.
30 years after that bill was put in place.
Yes.
So what do we need to do differently? And unless you resolve that, you're not going to reduce the number of people in parliament. Or you will reduce them drastically, and you'll have a problem at one corner and another corner, and you're going to have a higher defense expenditure. And the other thing I also want to submit on is reducing the size of parliament does not necessarily mean reducing the number of special interest groups. That's not the only way to reduce the number of people in parliament. Many countries with smaller parliaments also have special interest groups, okay? So the issue about special interest groups is about inclusivity, knowing that under normal circumstances they wouldn't come through. I know when you talk about that in Uganda, people tell you there are so many women in the parliament. And I'll give you a few statistics. Recently, Honorable Peace Mutuzo defended her PhD, and she evaluated this thing has affirmative action for women this time led to gender transformation in society, so that society is ready to vote women. She went, I think she has a sample size of around 400 plus people from the different corners of the country, the 4 big areas. And what she found out that although everyone talks about how wonderful women are now leaders, we've seen what they can do, and they can do A, B, C, D, when it comes to voting them, no, they have their track. This is the men's track. And she gave us some statistics from the Electoral Commission. In the last election alone, 2,266 people contested in this parliament. 1,879 of them were men, and 145 were females. So 77.2% were female. And of these, only 17 women were voted for on the open seat. So when you look at the politics of the open seat, it's only 4.8%. When we go to the same issue of gender with the youth councils, apart from coming on the special seat, no one got voted in on the open seats or on straightforward for the youth councils. So in a way, the special interest group have remained like a special track for those people. So it is true, we may need to reduce the size of parliament if we want to reduce the numbers, and we cannot reduce the cost. But that should not be a day, and we've not yet gone by the to disabled, we've not yet gone to the youth, we've not yet gone to the elderly, we've not yet gone to defense and all the other groups that bring in people. So reducing parliament does not necessarily mean you have to shed off the special interest and keep only the mainstream. Because actually the problem is not coming even from the special interest. The majority are on the mainstream. That's where the reduction have to occur. So I think we need to understand the rationale of the special interest groups. And it's really about inclusivity. It is about voice, and it's about participation. And so as bystanders, yes, we look, the parliament is big, but the issue is not its size, the issue is its cost of running it, okay? But otherwise, in terms of participation and representation, we have gotten here because we have failed to resolve our identity politics. So the day we resolve the identity politics, the day we resolve, if we even out development, then people will not be clamoring, now this district, we want this district, we want this county, we want this region, we want this gender, we want this religion, we want this age. Thank you.
And Professor, you've said something about identity politics. I'm going to come back to that when we come back from the break. And also something else, how do we separate the chaff from really finding the grain in getting the substance of what we're supposed to be discussing? Because it's patent that we discuss people that have disappeared and all these things. But how do we take the emotions out and really discuss objectively?
Politics
and I'll give an example of what Captain Francis Babu did when we were in Parliament then. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be discussing that and more.
Pay or shop with MTN Momo and get cashback every week. It's free of charge.
Wano nno tuli Bukoto era lero we tugenda okugaba pichipichi yaffe eri omwanguzi waffe wano we tuzze.
I'm so excited and I'm sure even all the people, all the staff at Kwaliwath are all excited. We thank you very, very much.
Myaka 25 nga MTN eweereza naye nga buli week tugaba pichipichi 5.
Very, very excited. I'm excited about MTN giving back to its customers. I'm really grateful. Thank you so much, MTN.
The fact that we have won really shows that people like Mama. Their services are really nice. MTN, your services are okay. The network is good. We are satisfied.
Chikola sense ne?
Use the Momo app or dial *165 *3#.
You are family from that very dangerous.
You are ready to invest in Airtel's initial public offering? Good choice. I'm going to show you how to do it straight from your phone. First, you're going to want to make sure you have a Securities Central Depository SCD account. Dial *185*85# from your Airtel number. Choose Airtel IPO purchase from the available options. Enter your valid national identification number when prompted. Before you purchase, there are a few things you need to know. The minimum purchase is 2,500 shares. The share price is 100 Uganda shillings. Select the number of shares you wish to purchase. Choose your relevant broker for the purchase. Enter your Airtel Money PIN to confirm the transaction. Congratulations! You receive a confirmation message of your successful purchase.
Are you tired of high fees and slow transfer time when sending money? Airtel Money is here to revolutionize the way you move your money. We have revised our rates back to ground. Sending money from Airtel to other networks in Uganda, East Africa, and to the rest of the world has never been more affordable. Dial *185# and start sending money. Switch to Airtel Money today and experience unbeatable rates and top-notch services for all your local and international money transfer needs. Airtel Money, instant, secure, borderless.
Metu Bus Industries, Namambe, the manufacturers of buses for transporters, schools, tour operators and special purpose vans. Metu Bus Industries offers a range of buses known for safety, comfort and reliability. Depending on your needs, a bus can simply be a point A to point B people mover with just seats or a special design that includes a restroom, power outlet, Wi-Fi, television and a refreshment center. Buy your buses from Metu and support industrialization of Uganda.
Ndeka wena otyo mbagemye rubona mubaire muri kolati
ndide kulagirira ono ngeri gyebawayo kumbaga ya mwene ngwakozesa momope
eisimu eriwa gye buli ko
tola yesimu wena nakobya ironi gesimu tobulira
eisimu yini
niga sita ndala mukaga 5 sita 3 otewe ashi onige yes balese chawo
balese merchant code gye balisaba mama kadi balati
kayo buzono wa kitamu nsanvu tamu nsanvu mirundi 3
balisaba
tamu sente lewe
amount baleta mobile money
mobile money
bali kunsaba pini
ebutawo tamu piniyo
iwa imwe
aye baba embaga ya mwene mwekuwoniza.
Pay or shop with MTN Momo and get cash back every week. It's free of charge. Use the Momo app or dial *165 *3#.
Welcome back from that quick commercial break here as we get into the last leg of this show, Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso, and I have a very expertise panel, both former members of parliament, academics, and we're all discussing what do we do to get quality and not quantity, or get substance over form in our parliament there. There's a lot of feedback coming through. I'll be reading it in a short while, but let me get to Professor Sarah here. Professor, you left me with 3 things to think about during this break, and I want to make sure that we tackle them before. One, you talked about standards.
Yes.
And it got me tickled, wondering, do we have a standard of governance, especially even if we cut across the board, the judiciary, because the same members of parliament decide their salary, they decide their emoluments, and there's no one to touch that. Do we have a standard in that area? And also, how do we solve this underlying current of identity?
That's difficult. I think that one will be for everyone to, to answer. But I can make my try. Of course, it's unfortunate that Parliament gets to decide its emoluments without regulation. And we are hoping that when the Salary Commission comes in place, probably it will also touch the parliamentarians. And you know, they engage in a certain behavior. If at all their emoluments are not resolved, nothing else will pass. So in a way, they hold everyone at ransom. I think that is unfortunate. But I also think if there were true representatives, they would know, they would be aware of the economy they're operating in. But again, when you talk about MPs, they're talking about the needs they're going to resolve. And I don't know how we are going to resolve this. Probably if we did service delivery and stopped making the parliamentarian responsible for our health, for our wedding, for our funerals, for our everything, maybe they would easily take the little monies. One time I think we saw the president of one Latin American country, was it Honduras, who lived on very basic means. Probably if we did economic development and all left economic development to the executive as they are mandated to do, probably the emoluments wouldn't be that high. But then the other thing of identity politics, it is a problem and it is a growing feature globally now. So we are back into the politics of identity. I know towards independence, this matter was a little bit resolved. There were issues before independence. There were issues at independence. Countries got together and fought for independence as one. After independence, of course, people disagreed with who had gotten what. So we saw all those kinds of wars, liberation wars and counter-liberations that occurred. Officially looking like ideological wars, but in the bottom, actually, they were really identity politics wars. Right now, they have been further escalated again by modern understandings of democracy. You see, you have the democracy where you either have the rule of the masses, Plato, then you had the rules of those who have something according to Aristotelian kind of democracy. Then, of course, you go to Abraham Lincoln, whereby government of the people, by the people, and of the people, and all that kind of thing. And contemporary understandings of democracy really front about the rule of the majority without forgetting the minority, or rule of the majority with the inclusion of the minority. So it's no longer enough for the majority to decide. What you actually determined by is how you are catering for the minorities who are not part of the majority. Because catering for the majority is obvious. But the issue is how far are you going out to give voice to the voiceless too? And in a way, it looks like inclusion, but I think it has also heightened the difference of these minorities and majorities, and in a way it has driven some of the identity politics. But a lot of the identity politics is being driven by lack of opportunities or limited opportunities within a growing population. So you have a growing population, and people are now wondering who is getting which job and who is getting to manage what. Therefore, if we are also there, And unfortunately, you get people organizing as such and going to negotiate with the head of state as such, okay? And that becomes, even within parliament, by the way, you have the Lango Parliamentary Group, you have the Baganda Caucus, you have, I think the Easterners have failed to organize themselves into one block, so they have one WhatsApp group, the Eastern group. So you have, so then within the West, you have people going as villages. You know, for us, we are coming from Bushenyi, we are coming from Mitoma. This is actually heightening identity.
How do we resolve it, Professor?
I think one way to resolve it is not to give attention to it. And it is different from our country that you vote an individual who must look like you so as to get in. And I know even when we talk about women, you'll find the women who speak like some of us don't easily get in to be voted by the people. People vote those women who actually look like the community, you're in Mothers Union, you're doing things very well, you're there for all barriers, you're there for everything. If you come with trousers kajanja, really they don't like it. So that is one thing. But what can we do, or what have other countries done to resolve the current debate? Sometimes the election is not directly by the person. You vote for the parties. As we shall be going to a national election in 2026, you vote for the parties. And you say, okay, the number of seats in parliament, like now we are saying, is 200 max, okay? Or 100 max. Then people vote, okay? And then within there, you see the proportion. Maybe NRM got 60%, the party. People voted for the party, not for individuals. Then maybe NUP got 20, DP got 20, and another one got 20, like that. Then these numbers, these percentages are given to the party. Choose the people who are going to come to occupy those seats. So then the delegates' conferences occur to pick if your party go to one slot, the delegates' conference will sit to pick the one from among you who come. If your party got 60%, your delegates' conference then sits to elect this 60 to come and occupy those slots. Then the affirmative action and the balancing occurs within the party, but does not occur to extrapolate the size of parliament. So the size of parliamentary seats remains fixed, okay? It remains fixed according to if you were 10 parties and you all got 10%, you all choose who of your 10% are going to come. This also means the party manages you. Maybe that's where now the effectiveness and ideology comes in. Then you get to know which party stands for what. But right now we really run on an individual merit thing. Even when people ascribe to a party, it's not that they are loyal to that party. The party is just what is the vehicle to bring them. The most important thing is the tribe, it's the gender, it's the age, it is the religion, it is the marital status. So we are overloading the political process with everything else which is not political. And little wonder when they come to parliament, we raise questions about their performance. But you really can't blame them when they said they speak only for 2 minutes. There's not much time for him to articulate economics, although people may have voted for him as an economist and a former banker. But there's just no space because there are more than 500, but it also complicates decision making. So I think there are various models that have worked somewhere that we can sort of clone and see what works best for us. But I think the best way is have a fixed number, let people run according to the party slots, and let the parties decide who of their people come, other than each time just increasing numbers, increasing people and things like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Honorable Mara, let me come to you. There are quite a number of proposals that have come out. Today, we saw one coming out by Honorable Norbert Mao about having assistant deputy speakers. He cited a case where both the Right Honorable Rebecca Kadaga and the late Right Honorable Olanya were out of the country and there was no plenary. What are your thoughts about this? Creating two houses, having assistant deputy speakers, reducing the number. What do you make of these, and will they get us the effectiveness we're looking for?
As I've already indicated, the thrust of my argument is that we really need to downsize Parliament. Getting assistant deputy speaker is more an administrative work. It's fine, you can pick within the elected representatives. But I think it doesn't resolve the issue of numbers. And one of the solutions, remember, for example, in 1980, for us in Lango, I was in primary school. I was represented by Honorable Joel Alirumara. And it was called Lira North constituency. Now, Lira North constituency had Lira district, part of Lira district, had part of Aleptong district, and had Otuke. So it's a geographical area. Now, what the Honorable Babu talked about is that let's look at population, 300,000.
Yes.
And then we demarcate constituencies. When we demarcate constituencies, it doesn't matter the issue of identity politics. We just say we are going to group you up in this constituency. For us, all of us are people of Lango.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter whether I'm from Otuke or you're from Aleptong district or you're from Lira district. As long as this, in terms of demarcating the constituency, you are put within that constituency. Then let the best out of that area compete. Yes. And you get the best coming out of that place.
Correct.
Yes. Parties then can actually do, as we do the primaries and whatever, and people compete. So you have a limited number. I have listened to President Museveni. I think in every opportunity he speaks to the nation, he talks against identity politics. Every time. And remember when Honorable Chagulanyi was visiting, and he came to Buganda, and I told he made some speech in Buganda, for which he was totally criticized by talking about the issues of Buganda, and that he was emphasizing identity politics. But that is in terms of talking, and the law is there. But the question, practice. How do we practice? We have the man from HIC, the first HIC to come to Parliament, and he came unopposed. I think he's the first person to go to university also.
Yes.
Yes, so now we said we must have an HIC in Parliament. So we are practicing identity politics. But when we talk about it, we talk against it. But in practice, we do. So that is one of the reasons I think the professor has espoused, is that when people feel that they are disconnected in terms of service provisions and so forth, that is when people start demanding that, no, I think you need to carve something for us so that we have our person, maybe they'll look after us. So I think in terms of the constitutional amendments, we must have a criteria for demarcating constituencies. And for me, population is the best bet, because we are not looking after animals. We are looking after human beings. So that we know we have 47 million people. We do the statisticians. We have very well-read statisticians here. They go into the field with the Electoral Commission, and they look at that number. They create for us the constituencies. Say, now we have this constituency, we have that, limited in number, so that you have quality people coming out to Parliament. The second thing, to see how outrageous sometimes we can become, we are now demanding that teachers, even the one of nursery, must have university degrees. That's where we have gone. But now when it comes to people who are coming to make laws for the country, laws on banking, law on renewable energy, law on geothermal physics, or on nuclear energy, and whatever, we said, no. You must have O-level equivalent. You must have A-level equivalent. We are happy for you. So we have bastardized politics. Now, we cannot demand from others what we don't have. So how are we going to legislate and have laws that are meaningful to the people of Uganda? When we treat politicians differently, we cajole them, we said, yeah, a politician can be anything. And yet in terms of order of precedence, we are number 17. We are up there. We are called honorables. When you say, oh, I'm honorable member, you know, you are expected to be top of notch in terms of your intellectual prowess, in terms of management, leadership, understanding the intricacies of the dynamics of what the country parliament should be. And so there are a lot of things that we must deal with. So in terms of the entrance level, we have lowered it to anything. And so now, everyone now feels they can be an MP.
Yeah.
So you go and compete with somebody who has got Fs in senior 4 and Fs in A level, and is your competitor. And an electoral commission has opened up. Even Tango Odo himself said there are people whom he has refused to endorse under NRM to go and run for, but it was endorsed by his deputy because he knew that this one did not go to school. He got the paper on Nkrumah Road. So how did we sink politics so low? And yet that is supposed to be the epicenter of leadership and legislation.
Okay.
So I think we need to look at this thing. And by the way, somebody told me, Omara, you are so passionate about this thing. You came out of a constituency which was created for you, a cut, and then you found yourself on the other side. My question was, I think I did not ask anybody to break the constituency. Well, I was campaigning from the other side, and I came to Kampala. When I went back, the constituency was cut. The issue is country first. And I wasn't born an MP. I won't die one. I will have to exit. And I have told my colleagues, members of parliament, that the attrition rate of parliamentarians is 80%. We might think actually that no, we don't want to reduce the number of parliaments because I'm protecting my seat. I will be defeated in the next election. Anybody can go. So let us put the country first and say, what is it that this country needs? We need services to the people, more resources to the people. And therefore, austerity measures that put more money into the pocket of citizens is a genuine cause. And I'm appealing to my fellow MPs that let's support this. Reduce number of parliament, not only parliament, but government. And that is why, Honorable Babu, you've talked about regional governments.
Yes.
So why don't we create the 15 districts, former districts of Uganda, and make them regional governments?
Yes.
And then you have the council, only one council in a region, rather than having all these ones all over the place with no consequence.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mara. Dr. Benson, let me come to you. And before I get to you, let me first read some of the feedback that has come through. Joseph here says, there is no country as diverse as Uganda on the planet. According to a Harvard study, this makes the need for inclusivity and representation patent, hence the number. Meanwhile, there is a need for a biocamera system that should be in the chambers of the House dealing with issues of national interest and others focusing on constituency issues. Thank you for the show. Thank you too. There's also need to revisit our constitution and reduce the number of members of parliament. A small number can internalize and reflect on issues that affect the country. This is Christopher. Thank you very much. This is Asaf from Mubende. With 557 members of parliament, 46 million Ugandans, it means that each MP represents 82,500 people. Thank you for the math. Do we have a recommended number of MPs, people represented, the ratio in Uganda, as we have it for the teachers to pupils or doctors to patients or police to people, among others?
Yes.
Thank you very much. That's a good one there. The number of MPs sent to parliament is too high, which affects the economic status. The country that leads to a high expenditure on the wages, unfortunately. Most of them have no record of speaking out during sessions. It's better to have reduced the number now. This is Francis from Arua City. Finally, Aboki Fred from Wakiso says the Chinese are where they are because they practice a system that works for them. Selection, then election. One must qualify and demonstrate that they can run an office before they stand to be elected for office.
Correct.
Yes.
I think the parliament sits once a year. As a result,
That's a good one.
China has overtaken all the other countries of the Western Europe and is heading to overtake the US. Of course, the West will keep telling us that it's a dictatorship.
Yes, leadership.
That is the standard there. Thank you very much.
You identify them and training them.
How do we put guardrails that the members of parliament do not become greedy, move around as they wish, deal with their own emoluments, deal with everything else? That's my first question. The second one, do we need a constitutional review to solve our leadership debacle?
Well, there was a time when I believed so much in legalese and documents and statutes and constitutions. As I grow older, I realize that they don't. It's one thing to have laws, but it's another for them to have meaning.
Yes.
So constitutional reviews in Uganda, we know the history of the constitutional reviews, and we know how little they have changed. Much of what is wrong with the country is not the law. It is the practice.
The practice, yes.
It's the politics. This constitution, even before it was amended so many times, there was not much that was seriously wrong with it. But how come that it has not prevented the abuses we are talking about? So even if you have a review, that alone will not address the problem. The problem is in our mindset. I think it's what Honorable Bob called the DNA. The problem is our political DNA. And the Constitution will not help you to put right your DNA.
How do we solve that DNA problem?
It takes time. It's a cultural thing. And the culture,
61 years.
Yes, because we have not addressed it consistently. You see, Nyerere addressed this thing in Tanzania by practicing a politics that was above ethnicity and designing policies that addressed this, that de-emphasized ethnic identity. Swahili as a uniting language.
Cement.
And English.
Yes.
Ujamaa.
The national brotherhood, an economics that is inclusive. Up to now, if you are in Tanzania and you ask about a politician, people will not know his or her ethnic group. They don't. So they defeated ethnicity by refusing to give it space.
Some quick information. When I was a chief executive there of Stanbic, we were doing a core banking changeover, new system to another. Then one of the support people came from Uganda, and it was Luo Langoman from Lango, from Lira. And so I was so excited to see him. So he came to me and we were hugging. So these guys were stunned. Senior managers. One of them politely walked to me. You know I'm the boss. They walked to me and said, "Sir, that is not allowed here." I said, "What?" He said, "You're speaking a local language. Here you either speak English or Kiswahili. No one speaks their local language in public places. You speak Kiswahili." So Nyerere actually killed it. That's the information I want to give. Yes.
Wow. But what's the consequence of doing the same in Uganda? Because every society has its internal contradictions.
Yes, but
I think it is because we didn't start on it from the outset. We allowed the genie out of the bottle, and now it's very hard to put it back. But through education, conscious education, and practice. You see, sometimes you encourage ethnicity by creating the impression that you are really favoring one ethnic group against others.
Yes.
Then they are forced to think of that. But if your politics reflected national outlook,
national outlook, national identity,
yes,
national,
yes. In 10, 20 years, this thing would die.
Yes.
Now, the other point I wanted to make, to emphasize really, I think I mentioned it in passing at the beginning. Looking at downsizing parliament is only the first step. We must have a full policy of downsizing politics generally and government.
Yes.
Because now imagine, you reduce parliament to 200 people, but you still have 100 ministers. Meaning 1 out of 2 MPs will be a minister. That's ridiculous. So as you reduce parliament, you must also reduce the executive.
Everything.
Yes, you see, and they are efficiently run. So it's never about numbers. You mentioned something about regional governments. Incidentally, the Constitution has elaborate provisions.
I was the one who moved that one.
Yes.
How they are to run, how they are to have assemblies, how they are to be financed, how to have their own
everything.
And everything. But we refuse it to look there. Instead, we decentralized it to the districts and the sub-counties, and quietly we centralized everything.
Yes.
Now, people look at the MPs as very important because they say all life is in Kampala. Once you have political and economic life meaningful at lower levels,
Nobody will
then
look at
nobody will kill each other. People will not kill each other.
But the British did it when they were here. They ruled through the local chiefs.
And the chiefs were. They were saying, oh, how will we get the leaders? Do you realize that the first parliament of Uganda in the 60s, the quality was up there?
Yes.
Now, definitely they were not as educated as the parliamentarians
Of today, yes.
How many had PhDs, how many had masters? Basically, many of them were not even graduates. But look at the Hansard of the 60s. You'll be shocked at the quality of debate.
Yes.
So the leaders are there. But you see, in a system that does not work, the wrong people come out. We have commercialized politics, so the rich, the thieves really will come out. We have turned the politics into a job, so people can kill.
And into a joke.
Yes.
To a job. From a job to a job.
Yes, from a job and a job. People can now kill to be MPs. If it was service, maybe people would not kill each other for the opportunity to serve. So, back to what I think Honorable Agnes said, it is time to make politics less of a job and more of a sacrifice and a service. Then the right people will emerge.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Honorable Agnes, let me come to you. When you look at the 10th and the 11th, you see emotions, charging of emotions, especially when national issues come. When I look at Honorable Francis Babu and I remember issues of ministers who were censured then, Honorable Matthew Ruchikere, Honorable Sam Kutesa, Honorable Jim Muhwezi, there was that oneness to be able to hold accountability. How do we remove the emotions and be able to give the Ugandans what they desire in national interest?
Thank you. I think issues of emotions, representation, and how businesses are done, it is hinged on what, first of all, brought us there. What is it that has actually motivated some of us to join that house? And my colleagues have raised it. If only leaders, not only members of parliament, it's unfortunate that today we are just talking about parliament. If only people who are given responsibility to lead or responsibility to serve, if our attention would focus on three things. One, the service to the people. For me, that is the bottom line. Whether I have emotions, whether I'm talking about what or I'm walking out, is my walking out, is my emotions, is my utterances on the floor, does it translate to the service to the people of Uganda? Because that's all they need from us. The second issue that as leaders and members of parliament or even council and all these other areas where if only we could actually focus on an equitable and balanced development. I think Professor talked about it. I don't think we would be having these scrambles really. Because if you listen very keenly on the submissions and the scramblings that you're looking out in Parliament, you are going to hear about issues, oh, our road is not done. Oh, it is now 30 years. Oh, it is this. It's really about how do we balance the growth and the development of our country. So that we feel really it is an inclusive growth, it's an inclusive debate, it is an inclusive, approaches to governance. Then the third issue is the cost. The cost of whatever we're doing. And I think we have really ably elaborated that if we are to have the numbers and we are to have the emotions and we are supposed to debate and all that, at what cost are we doing it? And actually, if I am standing out there to present on an issue, I have to be mindful that after all this, what do we get out of it? And I remember at the beginning of my statement, I said that for me, I look at these issues of parliament, the numbers, the qualities and all that in terms of costs and the governance and the leadership that comes with it. And so for me, the emotions, we need to understand the driving force under these emotions which are coming. Are we answering really to the questions that our people are really asking? And then the other issue is also that there's this assumption that members of parliament need to do things, you know, in certain ways and all that. And there's that high expectations that leadership comes with resource allocation. It comes with decision making. It comes with the voice of the particular group of people. And for me, I think that is where we need to focus on. That are we really measuring up to that expectation? And I think around 2012, 2013, I published a paper, and the title was Leadership and the Mango Tree. And everyone who read that paper was asking, but what made you think about this kind of paper, you know, this kind of publication? And for me, I was looking at leadership more that you can be a leader anywhere. Even when you are in the house, you have to have it at the back of your mind that whatever I'm doing here, does it really represent the leadership or the leader in me? And that paper also was looking at that leadership is just about service, which I can't really talk even more. It is just about service. And so the emotions that you see and some of the issues that you see coming up needs to be really understood in that context, in my view. But also the aspect of prioritizing on what we ought to focus on vis-a-vis what we are actually doing. And that, as you rightly said, I don't think it has got anything to do with the quality or something, because some of it, I think Professor has just said it, that if you look at that, the history of that parliament, not everyone really was up there with all these qualifications and all that, but I think it comes from that innate kind of obligation that as leaders we've got to carry on.
Before I come to Captain Francis Babu, your thought, there is a proposal to be able to extend the term limit of a member of parliament from 5 to 7. The justification or the reasoning behind it is the first year you're spending it learning. The last year you're spending it campaigning because your competitors are already in the field.
Yes.
You basically have 3 years in between there to deliver a service. But there's recess, there are all these things. What do you make of this proposal, and is there any justification in it?
For me, the issue of years or term extension or how many years, for me, it's not an issue. It goes back to who are the leaders, who are the members of parliament that are in the house. One thing is parliament shouldn't be a place to learn. It should really be a place, like my brother Omara said, should be a place where you come when you're actually ready and you know exactly what you're supposed to do. I don't buy into any proposal that is going to come that will cost Ugandans additional costs on top of what they're already struggling with. If there is a way that even the 5 years can be reduced to 3, so long as it can save money to build a road in a Molatar district, or it can save money to build a hospital, or build a better school in a Molatar, I would be happy for that proposal. But any proposal that is going to come with additional costs at the expense of the voters and of the citizens of this country, I think would be doing a disservice to our people as leaders. So that would really be my view.
Captain Francis Babu, most of the things, especially when you're getting into areas of leadership, or even if it's a company, like Honorable Mara said, there's that bit of mentorship. Where is the place for the Elders Forum in helping develop the governance of this country, not just looking at parliament, but the executive. Where is the place for the Elders Forum to be able to give some guidance in these areas, to calm some pressures and emotions that seem to charge us and leave national issues?
Thank you very much. In fact, I wanted us to separate Parliament from our national problems. Our country is at a certain stage of development. And I think Omara did a good job the professor did a good job of bringing something about Nyerere. All these countries you see that have got democracy today did not start with democracy, they started with national identity. In other words, can we unite this country? Is Uganda united? Let's start from that point. Is our population been given enough civic education to understand what is going on? Our people. So, the first, we are dealing with two things. We are dealing with this modern parliament, which is at a different level, and we are dealing with the population, which elects this parliament. So we want the population to start thinking like that parliament. It can't. We have a population that needs also to grow. So a member of parliament, and in fact when I was a member of parliament, I told my people, we have an extra job. Apart from the functions in the constitution, we have a job to tell our people what a member of parliament is supposed to do, what leaders should be like, and how we can get our leaders. So we need to educate our population so that they can give you a good member of parliament.
Yeah.
You get my point? So sometimes we mix the two. You can't mix the two. Now, I also do not agree with a lot of things people say, oh, members of parliament decide their emoluments. Go back and find out why they were given that function. They were given that function because they don't want the executive to control parliament. If the executive started deciding the emolument for parliament, it means they control them. So there was a reason, and in culture of parliament, the parliamentarians are supposed to be cultured to an extent of understanding how the economy is going and how they can give themselves a reasonable salary. So people confuse this. You cannot allow the executive to hold parliament at ransom. And this is something people don't understand. They keep saying, oh, parliament is giving themselves salaries. No. There's a reason. When I was a member of parliament, and I'll give you this today, we went to talk to government about salaries of members of parliament. And we told them that we know you don't have enough money in the economy. Let us put it at this level. In fact, the level we put it was lower than what they wanted to give us. And I will give you an example. People banged the table on that thing. But eventually they turned around to me and said, I think you're the real member of parliament. You have brought out the points. Because the members of parliament, for example, technically, are supposed to be given enough facilities in their constituency and at parliament. And they are supposed to be given assistance to do their work. They are supposed to be given transport. Now, when you take all those things together and you put them together, the money looks a lot. But at the end of the day, you imagine 3 members of parliament. In the Congress, a member of Senate is given $1 million a year to run his office. Now, people don't talk about this. They think a member of parliament goes to Barre and I don't know what. No, that is for cheap members of parliament who have deceived their constituents that they will give them everything. That I'll give you half of my salary when you elect me. We've had this during campaign. They have said, oh, we are everything. We are alpha and omega. Now, our population should know that a member of parliament is given certain facilities to be able to do his job. Or her job. Now, I want us to be very clear. Let us not run the members of parliament very down to give them such a low salary. No. Let's reduce them and give them a reasonable salary for them to do their job. And let us tell the people exactly why they are given that salary. Not to tell people they are getting a lot of money. No. Tell them we are giving them a vehicle because we want them every month to go to their constituency. We are giving them an office in the constituency because we want them to talk to their people. We are giving them an office in Kampala for them to do their work. And we are giving them assistance. Now, they should know these things. But people keep on, saying wrong things to annoy the population, to annoy everybody, that members of parliament are overpaid. Actually, they are not. They are members of parliament here. If you really took the amount of work they are supposed to do, the salary they are getting is not enough.
It's very little.
Now, let us go to the point everybody is talking about. How people should behave. The onus is on the whole country, how we can mobilize this nation to become united so that we can start doing things the way they're supposed to be done. And the government in power is supposed 40 years ago to have started uniting this country. The cement has been given to you, the language. 2, the other gentleman used the Wundugu, which is brotherism. The other one is to make our people come up. Now, this other argument, they are not developing this area, they are not giving us a road here, that's a political jargon made by members who want to become members of parliament. But if government came out honestly and said, this is the money we have, we are going to develop this area because we want people to put up industries there, we want to develop this area because we want to put this thing there, and people are told honestly what is supposed to be going on, people would understand it. But the politicians are the ones who turn around and say, no, why should Omara get a road? But Omara has got gold. We want a road to go there because there is gold. We want to go to Tororo because there is gold now. We want to go here because there is cement. We want to go here because there is petrol. So we must tell the people the truth. That is why Lee Kuan Yew was very clear. He brought 3 points. He called it MPH. Meritocracy. Meritocracy, where he got people with merit into positions. Then he brought the other of being pragmatic for the country, to be honest to your account. That's what is honesty. You have to be honest in everything you do, as a member of parliament, as a member of the executive. And I agree entirely with the gentleman that if you reduce parliament, the members of the executive should be reduced to probably 20. So I have no problem with that. The point is we must wake up to the occasion. And all of us should unite our country. And in the olden days when I went to school, we were very lucky. We used to get people from different areas. I went to Makerere College School. We got people from all over Uganda to come to HSC. And today we are brothers. They came from different places. You got people going to this school, to that school. Nowadays, they don't have that. Now, what we should be talking about here, if you want to have a good governance system, is education. We should spend all our money, reduce that parliament to 200 people, put all that money in education, and get our people to come up with a good education, with character. And I'll tell you something about character. People of your age group are very highly educated nowadays, our moderator. And one of them, a son of a friend of mine, came and told me, I've now got a company, cyber security. I'm in Uganda, in Tanzania, in Ethiopia, and everywhere. I said, but you have a lot of friends who are qualified. From Makerere, we have a very good school there. He said, yes, we have very good people. Unfortunately, they do not have character. So, my dear brother, as I end, our problem, our people are lacking character. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Captain Francis Babu. I'm going to give each of you parting shots, even as we call it a night. I'll start with Professor, Honorable Mara, Dr. Benson, Honorable Agnes, and finally Captain Francis Babu.
Thank you very much. Mine goes back to the whole aspect of building a national identity. And there are quite a number of things we can work with. A few weeks ago, we were discussing the whole issue of AFCON. So we can work on certain national projects around which to create a national project, a national identity. But when all is said and done, of course, all our parliamentarians qualified to be in parliament as by the set laws, and they are working with a difficult situation. But we should also remember that politics also matters. We may want to wish it away, but politics matters. So we need to manage the politics. The other thing is society also matters. If a society has never seen any service delivered in their community, they will go after the MPs. So there are those aspirations we want. They are the decisions we want to see. But we can never lie to society. So unless we fix what is in society, the hens will come home to roast. So let us do equitable development, and the people will stop running after our MPs. Our MPs will stop demanding high emoluments, and they will stop demanding constituencies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mara.
Thank you very much. I think this has been a great debate. I would like to appeal to fellow citizens that there comes a time when actually we need to relook where we are coming from and where we are, and see how best we can run our country. Currently, almost over 40% of our budget is funded by borrowed money, and that is not nice. The executive, they have talked about the rationalization of government. It's taking too long, it's not happening. So we need to have a small government so that we can release the rest of the money for public expenditure. The jobs are created by the private sector. Let us create enabling environment for the private sector to flourish and create more jobs for our young people. A much smaller government and a bigger private sector. So let the debate begin, and hopefully that the citizens outside there who have elected us to office will raise their voices so that our parliamentarians can hear. We have a much smaller parliament and hopefully a much smaller executive in terms of cabinet, and then we have regional governments, and President Kennedy said when there was an accident where astronauts died when they were trying to go to the moon. His statement was that America, we do these things not because they're easy, because they are hard. So sometimes, and they continue to send more astronauts into space and until they landed men on the moon. So in our case, these are not small things, they are hard things. And we must be ready to confront some of these things so that in the end, we leave a legacy that we are put behind a better country, a more united country, and we must deal with the politics of identity, not in speech, but in action, and create a more united Uganda. So hopefully the debate will continue.
Thank you very much. Dr. Benson.
Thank you, moderator. Two connected things. To go back to what Mara mentioned. This is a time for the MPs not to look at this as their thing. That if we reduce the numbers, my chances of going to parliament are correspondingly reduced. It is time for the MPs to look beyond their job and look at the nation.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, no one wants to belong to a failed state. Everybody should be proud to belong to a nation that moves, that works, that is progressive. And so to hang on to something small because you fear to lose even that does not make sense. I think it is time for the members of parliament not to be selfish and really let the debate flow and let the number go down. Then really for government, we talked about building a real nation. We have to walk the talk. It's not enough to pay lip service to Uganda being one nation when in practice we don't reflect that. Because these people may not have degrees, but they are not fools. When there is an injustice, they can see it.
Yes.
And when they see it, they react in unpredictable ways. So people need to respect the people.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I would sum it up by our slogan as Rotarians, that service above self.
Yeah.
And all this discussion is about putting our country first and looking for mechanisms and ways of how best we can manage our country within the meager resources.
Yeah.
And therefore, I think as leaders, we need to focus on how to reduce the cost of governance.
Yeah.
If it is about members of parliament, let's cut it. If it is about executive, if it is about being over-governed, let's really go there and clean it up. And for me, I appreciate that as a country we are evolving. There was a time that we needed all the executives from LC1 and so many districts, so many constituencies and all that. But I think this is a time that we need to focus on the service to our people. And if that requires us to sacrifice positions and power and all that, let's do that so that we put our country first.
Thank you very much. Lastly, Captain Francis Babu.
Thank you very much. I think we've really said a lot today. And one of the things that I would like to say is that the culture of Parliament is extremely important for posterity. We need to set an example. And therefore, this Parliament now needs to look at us when we were in NRC. The rule, the law which was there allowed us to do the Constitution. Legal notice number 1. It gave us the powers to do a Constitution. But the majority of people didn't want it. They wanted to elect their own members to go and do the Constitution. So we passed a law against ourselves to set up the Constituent Assembly, and we asked people to go for election, and that was the first time they elected using a ballot box. And they elected delegates who went and did the Constitution. So we have an example. And nothing happened. Those who wanted to stand, who were members of Parliament then, went and stood and became member of the Constituent Assembly. I was one of them. Now, all I'm trying to say, it doesn't make any difference if you accept now and say, listen, let us have one central parliament, which is a central body, a small one, and let's have regional ones, which are also small, so that the regional one can do the development in those areas.
Yes.
And the central one makes sure that the division is equal.
Yes.
Once you do that, the whole country will stabilize and we'll have more rapport on what we want our country to go to, and with the riches we have. And I am saying this, that if we become honest with the riches we have, Uganda can go to greater heights.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I want to thank Professor Sarah, Honorable Mara, Dr. Benson, Honorable Agnes, and Captain Francis for coming through. Let me read some of the feedback here. We need 2 tiers of parliament. The lower house should be based on the population representation, not more than 150 in the whole country. The upper house should be based on the original 15 or 16 districts. The districts should be represented by 2 senators, irrespective of the population size. We must have a maximum of 200 representatives in both the upper and lower houses. Some from Kampala there. Thank you very much. The number of MPs is the major problem in Uganda's parliament today, because they have a big number and they end up electing even those who do not qualify to be in the parliament. But if the number is small, the competition will be high, hence the quality. That's Godfrey Chaka from... Lastly, here, Timothy, our current parliamentarians are fortune seekers. No objective debate in the House. The masses say yes, even when they know it is wrong. The voters of our MPs have a balance sheet of total losses there. James from Manafa. Thank you very much, James, for your feedback. I want to thank the team that is behind ensuring that we're well, the production team, Margaret, and also my producer, Patrick, for ensuring that we have everything we're doing here. But we'll end this with this quote. Do not explain your philosophy. Embody it. Good morning.
Wow, thank you.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.
This plan, as the name prescribes, is the project for restoration of livelihood in northern region. So it was designed to support the population in order to implement